Hi guys. If anybody doesn't know already, my name is Linda McCulchick, and obviously we stirred up a lot of controversy around this town about my father having COVID and being admitted into ICU. Obviously, we don't want to say the hospital's names or nurses. Because we believe this goes on everywhere. It's not just in our town. I believe it happens in every single hospital out here. Let me turn this off. That's my dad's favorite song. But anyway, so we have been severely bashed on social media about coming forward to some of the things that we've seen in the ICU room at this hospital while my dad was in their care. These are our opinions. We lived it. We want to spread awareness. And at the end of this video, I want you to make your own educated guess about what you think happened in this ICU room. Like I said, my daughter did a TikTok video, and apparently it was somebody that was either from the hospital or somebody that knew friends of nurses in the hospital, because they made a quick TikTok profile of "it's none of your business," and started bashing my daughter about lying and things like that. So I do want to jump on. I do believe that we need to spread awareness, and I do want to say 1,000%, we appreciate all the prayers that you have given to our family, everybody. We wouldn't have made it without it, and we would not have been this far without the grace of God. I do know that. God is in the miracle business, and He surely showed all of us, and we had to work through Him. You know, power without work is just going to fail. So we all had things that we had to do during the course of my father's stay there to make sure that he came out. So I do want to say this. Okay, so let's start back on February 1st, when my dad was diagnosed with COVID at this hospital. He was sent home with Pepsid and cough medicine, and was told to go home. My dad has a lot of things going on with him other than COVID, and has had it for quite some time. He has got COPD. Without going into everything that's going on with my dad, the two main factors of this is COPD, chronic kidney failure, disease, renal failure. Well, actually, no, he had kidney disease. So he was sent home with Pepsid and cough medicine. 7 days later, he is in distress, and we had to call the paramedics out there to his house, to my mom and dad's house, and he was brought in by ambulance. And first of all, my dad does have some anxiety, obviously, especially with this COVID going around. On paper and everything that is wrong with my father, he was not a candidate to survive this COVID, not at all. He has had some, especially with COPD already. We have been told by everybody, it's pounded in our head, in the elderly and COPD and chronically ill patients, that they're just not going to survive this. So he knew that going in. And before that, I'm going to try not to get upset. Before they took him in an ambulance, my dad looked up at me and he told me, he said, honey, he said, Daddy's not going to come home this time. And he apologized for it. He said, honey, I'm sorry. There's no way I'm going to come home this time. But he had to get to the hospital because he needed, we had him on his concentrator at home. And the paramedics obviously gave him some oxygen, and which he had been on his concentrator, so it wasn't oxygen deprived or anything like that. It's just, I think he was panicking and he couldn't really breathe that good with his COPD, and he made the decision to go by ambulance to the hospital. So he gets into the hospital, and there's a specific doctor that came to the bedside, and the first thing that he wants to know is if he is vaccinated, which my dad is not. Our whole family is not, and that is a choice that we made. Some people are going to say that we're selfish, but we just figured with a lot of people, they just don't know some of those outcomes, and we just felt like we just had a right to not take that vaccine. And for 2 years, my dad and my whole family, well, not my whole family, we've stayed away from him, but for the past 2 years, my dad and my mom and my grandmother, because my mom is taking care of my 90-year-old grandmother in their home as well, has escaped COVID for 2 years. So we thought we were all doing pretty good, but they came down with it, with nurses coming in and out. We don't know where that came from, but he ended up getting it. And he was doing fairly bad on it, obviously. And so anyway, so from the get-go, the doctor asked us about the vaccination and went over to my sister coming out the door after assessing my father and said, let me guess, you're not on, you haven't taken the vaccine either, have you? And she says, no, sir. That's my right not to take the vaccine, and we're just pretty much not going to go there. And he said, well, you continue doing that, and I'm going to continue buying Lamborghinis. So that's what the doctor said to begin with us. So obviously right then and there, we didn't have a lot of trust at the time with this doctor, but we wasn't sure if he was going to be the one to really take care of my dad. I just think that he made that horrible comment, and up to ICU my dad went. Immediately my dad came in there, I think at 12. Could have been earlier or later, I'll figure that out. But within an hour, this doctor ordered remdesivir. Now, we have seen videos about remdesivir. We have seen some people do good on remdesivir, but my dad is not a candidate for remdesivir. And he got 2 doses, 200 milligrams one day and 100 milligrams the next day. Now, obviously, we found out that through the RX department that he was not supposed to get remdesivir. But this was later on, so we will get to that later. But he wasn't supposed to get it, and the doctor obviously was supposed to go down to the RX department and explain the situation, and then they were going to make a decision if he should be on remdesivir or not. But that did not happen. The doctor pretty much went his own route and ordered it, and my dad got 2 doses. So then they said that he had 1 dose, but later in his all of his my charts and things like that we have all the documentation to, is that he got 2 doses of remdesivir. So there's that. So the first day since he got COVID on the 1st, there was an 11-day incubation period to where we could actually go in and touch my dad, talk to my dad, be by my dad's side. But since he came back into the hospital on the 8th, we only had 3 days. We had 3 days that we were kind of behind the glass, looking at my dad. So the first day, he's awake, he's alert, he knows what's going on. It says, he's, he knows what's going on, he knows where he's at, he's communicating with doctors, things like that. Mind you, that my dad has quit cold turkey on his medications that he takes at home. And one specifically that he takes is gabapentin, and he takes 1,600 milligrams a day, and he's been doing that for 7 years. So coming off of that in itself can cause sedation, withdrawals, panic attacks, agitation. That happens in itself. So at this time we didn't realize that, but but that was the first day. So I do want to let you know that, because that's very, very important going forward with his treatment, because that was one of the first questions that I asked one of the nurses, is what's going to happen with all the medication that he takes at home, and then all of a sudden he doesn't take it no more. Those can cause severe side effects in itself. And we all know this, and you nurses all know this. So she says, well, we can't override anything. The doctor didn't order anything, and that is, we got to do what the doctor says. So we've asked to talk to this doctor. He's nowhere to be found. We can't talk to any doctors about what's going on with my dad. We've asked them to come out into the ICU waiting room. We still have not been able to talk to anybody other than the nurses about my dad. That was the first day. On the 9th, we're still looking at my dad through the glass. We can't go in. And for some reason, I go up to we're at the hospital, our whole family's there, every day, day in and day out. And on the 9th, we took a break. The doctors and the nurses have quiet time between 3 and 5. Why they have this, I don't know. But later do we find out that for some reason, something happens every time between 3 and 5. So I decided to go up to the hospital a little early. We were taking a break, going to grab something to eat, get new clothes for the day, whatever. And I get there at 4:15 in the afternoon. And I'm sitting there with a couple in ICU. Their son was on a vent with COVID. And we're sitting there talking about things. And all of a sudden, I hear a code blue in the ICU room. It says code blue 126. And that 125. Sorry, that's my dad. 125. And I panicked, and I asked the man, I said, whose was that? What number was that? 125. I said, oh my God, that's my dad. I am running in after the doctor, all the nurses through the hospital, going in my dad's room, and they called a code blue on my dad. Panicked as I was, almost collapsed, crying, screaming. Everybody comes out slowly, and I'm crying even harder because I'm thinking that my dad just passed away. I get the doctors and nurses to come up to me and the doctor, and they said that there was some medication that crossed over He was on one medication and then the other medication, and that crossed over, and that caused him to have a code blue. Later that we found out it was a Brady, and it was lowered his heart rate dramatically, which in fact, through our investigation, that this Presidex, Geodon, Ativan, especially Presidex, can cause Brady, and he had Brady that day. So after this episode of this code blue, my family's pouring into the hospital. At this time, my sister came in. My mom was taking care of my grandmother at the house, and my sister came in. Before she came in, when I was in the ICU, I want to get things straight, and I know that I might be jumping around a little bit, but I just need to get this out here. So when I was in there with the doctors, the nurses and doctors alone, my dad looked over at me, and the nurse my dad said to him, "You scared the shit out of me." In his joking self, because everybody knows that my dad jokes around. And the nurse said, "No, you scared us." So he rolled over on his side, and he seen me. I'm waving at him through the glass. And the lady nurse asked him, "Do you know who that is?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I know who that is. That's my daughter." So my dad was in the right state of mind. He knew what was going on. My sister then came back to the glass with me, and he is blowing us kisses. We're waving to him. He holds up these 3 fingers to us. "I love you." And he knows. And from that moment on, I knew that my dad was going to be okay. So after that, my dad rests. Apparently, he was up drinking water afterwards. He was doing good. So we go home. Everybody says, "Go home. Don't stay up in the waiting room." So we go home. Come back the next day, and there's an episode with my dad. He doesn't know who anybody is. His eyes are completely glassed over. We go up to the window. We're knocking on the window. We get a nurse. I said, let my dad see us. Obviously, if he sees us, he'll snap out of this. I mean, we were like, what in the world is going on here? What's going on? So the nurse leans him up. He is completely dazed and confused. Looks like he is literally drug out of his mind. Literally. Red in the face. Eyes glassed over. The nurse is going like this to my dad and said, John, your daughters are here." He's holding his chin. "Your daughters are here. Look over at them." He wouldn't move. He looked like he was just gone. Just absolutely gone. She lays him back down. Still not agitated now. My dad's sitting up in the bed. He's just doesn't even know where he's at all. So he goes through this episode all day long, basically. They try to wake him up, and now he's getting agitated by the end of the day. Now it's rolling. He's getting agitated by the end of the day. And we have no idea what is going on with my dad. Meanwhile, we are praying. We were praying specifically. We were praying for the good doctors to be in there, great nurses to be in there to take care of them. Because at the end of the day, I want to explain this to this nurse that's none of your business. You might have a title of being a nurse, but I got a title of being a mother, and I am not stupid. There's mothers that drown their babies every day. There's doctors that are in prison as we speak for child sex trafficking. So this is a fight about good and evil back there, and I don't doubt that whatsoever, what we've seen. Our whole family seen it. He had some good doctors. I mean, not at this time. Had some good nurses, but he also had some bad nurses that were awful to us and mean to us, without a doubt. We're already going through the possibility of losing our father, and these protocols that they put him on, and find out that he's on remdesivir. So we're already not trusting this hospital's decision of what they're doing, because my dad's got kidney failure, kidney disease, but he had it before he went in, and they also knew that. And some of these nurses that say that we've got to follow the doctor's protocol, but then when I asked them, do you have to do that? One nurse specifically said, no, I don't, and I don't have to administer anything that I don't want to. So if you are taking care of them, being a nurse, and you see that my dad has a chronic kidney disease, and it's also the protocol of the hospital not to give this to him, then if that is the case, then you're the one who administered it to him. The doctor didn't, the nurse did. So there again, we're not trusting things going forward at this time. Still not. But apparently my dad is in a critical condition, obviously. And other than this COVID, we don't understand why my dad is so heavily sedated. Well, we found out that he was heavily sedated after the third day. We had no idea. Nobody came and told us that he was going to be on remdesivir. Nobody came and said that he's going to be on Ativan. Nobody came to say he was going to be on Geodon. Nobody come to say that he was going to be on Presidex. And I believe that, and I know that for a fact, that FDA states that you are not supposed to put a patient on Presidex for longer than a 24-hour period. My dad was on it for 4 days. 4 days. And also, prolonged use of Presidex, you can look this up also. It can cause severe agitation, severe withdrawal symptoms, and just all kinds of adverse reactions to all these medications being dumped into my dad. So here's the third day with the doctor that I didn't like, that said, I'll continue buying Lamborghinis. Me and my mom goes in the third day. This is when we are allowed to see him and go into the room. So those few days that we've already went through code blue. We're going through heavy sedation, not knowing what's going on with my father. And so we hit the third day. This third day, we're allowed to go in, and we're allowed to talk to my dad, see how he's doing. So we get in there, and this doctor tells us, hey, the goal today is to wake up John. Wake up your daddy. And that was the goal. Wake him up. He's not responding. And we kept telling the nurses, let us in there. He will respond to us. He will respond to us. I get in there. My mom had to leave. I go in there. It's my turn to go in there with my daughter. My daughter had to stay on the other side of the glass, and I was allowed to go inside there. So I'm singing to my dad. I'm talking to my dad, reminding my dad about his family, that we all love him, asking him if he could hear me, if he could squeeze my hand. Nothing. My dad is not responding to us at all. Not moving. Every now and then I would, just rub his shoulder or his head, and he'd just, pull away. He was pulling away. And not responding to us at all. Verbally, I'm opening up his eyes. I'm trying to get him to look at me. Maybe something will spark. Absolutely nothing. do I get? So I go out of the ICU. I leave my dad. I'm praying over my dad. My daughter's praying over my dad. And we go out to the ICU room. And I ask my mother for his my chart and to log in. And I start going to work. We prayed specifically. And I'm a true believer that that was my job to do. And that is what I did. Day in and day out. In 5 days, I promise you that I only got an hour and a half sleep. My family did the same, staying up all night praying. We were going outside my dad's window at night, sitting praying over everybody in there, not just my dad, but everybody. We were praying for the right doctors to come in there. We were praying specifically. So I knew that that was my job, is to look at all his records and look at all what he was on, what the doctors were giving him, watching his levels, his blood gases, everything that was flagged high. I was looking everything up. And so all these people that say don't look at Google or look up anything on the internet, don't listen to them, because if it wasn't for that, we did not have no doctors talking to us. Remember, at this point, we had none. We didn't know about the doctors coming in and making their rounds at 10 a.m. in the morning either, or we would have been there. So in his records, looks like his family is not at the bedside. But we were there. We were asking for answers. We were asking for these doctors. We didn't get any answers, so we had to look things up on the internet. Obviously, we wouldn't look up reputable. We always looked up reputable from another doctor or somebody else with a similar experience. Those were the things that we were looking up. So when I go on to his my chart, this is where I get mad, and I get mad at the doctor, and you would too. I look under his chart that his doctor fully sedated him that day, fully sedated him on tranquilizers, Ativan, Geodon, Presidex, tranquilizers. He was so far under, you couldn't even hold his hand and say, Daddy, and he wouldn't even move. He was so far under. Why was he so far under? He knew he was there. He knew what he was there for. He wasn't in no crazy other distress at that time. He was when he first got in there, but not days later. So, and that's not what made me mad mostly. The doctor told me to go in there and start waking him up. Are you kidding me? Wake my dad up on these tranquilizers? How in the world can I do that? So I'm getting mad at this point. And all of a sudden I see that doctor walk down the hallway of the ICU waiting room that was going to go back in there. And I rush out to him, and I asked him, I said, sir, now my family's coming behind me at this point, so I have witnesses to this. I said, sir, you knew that my dad was on tranquilizers back there. You knew it, but you asked me to wake him up. He wasn't going to wake up. He was not going to wake up, and you knew that. He said, did I tell you that? He looked at me straight in my face and said, did I tell you that? I said, yes, sir, you did. Yes, sir, you did. And he said, don't put words in my mouth. No, I didn't. I said, my mother was standing in there, and she heard it. And we were supposed to wake my dad up and get him to come to. And he wasn't, because you had him on tranquilizers. He said to us, well, we're just like a bunch of Nazis back there working, and you know what they did in the Holocaust? It's sleep deprivation, and torture back there. So our nurses are just like Nazis back there. Our mouth fell open. We could not even believe that this doctor would even talk like this. And all of us heard it. So at that point, I did not trust that hospital 1 minute. 1 minute. We wanted to get him moved. I wanted to transport him to a bigger and better hospital. Not one that's got 2 stars, now that I find out that they've got 2 stars. And by the way, I just wanted to let you see this too. When my dad went into the hospital, this is what he had. Days later, this is what he has going on. This is what he has going on. So we're thinking my dad's going to get intubated. And we definitely don't want him to do that, because everybody knows if you get intubated with COVID, especially with his chronic illnesses, there's slim chances that he is going to make it. And that actually came from one of his doctors that is very good friends with me that was off that week, that there would be a slim chance for your dad to make it if he was on a ventilator. And we knew that. So this was like we were in a horror story, a horror film, and we were the cast. We couldn't get any answers of what was happening to our dad. We didn't leave his bedside at that point. We would have to leave through 3 to 5 quiet time. And every time that we would walk in there, my dad had an episode of getting agitated, pulling off his IVs, swatting at the nurses. If anybody knows my father, and any nurses of you out there that has worked with my father, you know that he is not that way. My dad is a very gentle soul. He is not combative. His nurses love him. He jokes. He makes their work a lot easier. We have a lot of nurses in there that we love. So we are not bashing these nurses. But we also got to realize that the day that we live in, that we've got evil, we got good and evil. We're fighting good and evil every day of our lives, especially through this COVID pandemic. It's just crazy. So we're going to go to the next day. After them pumping him with all this stuff. And mind you, I'm still asking them why he can't be on his other medications, his normal medications. Because we looked this up. Those medications can cause adverse reactions to him of not having those, and especially the gabapentin, not to mention the other 21 that he's on, that these doctors are pumping down his throat. And so, so we go into the 4th day, and we had no idea that he was being seen by this neurologist at this point until later on in the afternoon, that about 3 or 4 hours later, we get his CT. We get his my chart, and we're looking, and all his CT scans are great. He did not have no hemorrhage. He did not have no stroke. There is nothing wrong with my dad's brain. But you get a neurologist that rolls in a screen in front of my father with the doctor in the screen, and he wants to assess my father. He's highly sedated. He's not coming to for even his family. And this doctor right here says that his family consented to this protocol. I mean, not this protocol, but this way of assessing my father, which we did not. We have not even talked to the neurologist. But that neurologist behind this screen thought my father's brain was deteriorating right in front of us, because my dad's mouth is wide open. He's laying back. He's laying back with his mouth wide open. He's not coming to for anybody. He's not moving for the nurses. He's not moving any of his extremities. This man is completely out. It looks like he's in a coma. And this doctor says that a high probability of he's brain dead and it's life-threatening. We've got this in here too. So we're freaking out at this point. They lied again. They lied to us, and they also says, it also says in here that they have talked to the family, and the family has consented to the plan of his care, any treatments to his care. And in the bottom of it says that they are highly considering a lumbar puncture for my father. Well, I come unglued. I could not believe that this was happening to my father. My father is not brain dead. We know that. We know that he is highly agitated. I have looked up why my dad would be agitated, because I had no idea. Why is my dad acting like this? I've never seen my dad act like this. There was one incident that I went in there and I woke him up and he came to, and all he did was grab me around my neck, and I was literally rubbing him and telling him, Dad, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. So this one doctor is saying that his brain is deteriorating. And then he's coming off of the Presidex, coming to, and this man is flipping out, grabbing everything. It was horrific to watch my dad go through that. It was traumatizing to us, traumatizing to him. So I go back on my Google and I'm like, okay, why is he acting this way? Why is it? And I look up, this ICU delirium comes in front of me. And I start reading what is going on with him back there and why these patients go into ICU delirium. In ICU delirium, these patients think you are killing them back there. They're delirious. It's reversible. I've talked to them about the ICU delirium, and they say you need to talk to his doctor. We can't get his doctor. We can't talk to nobody. We can't even talk to anybody. Every time that we would go in, if my dad was resting quietly, we would go back in there, and one specific nurse looked just real nervous all the time and real guilty looking all the time too. I don't know what was up with her, but I feel like we were completely manipulated about my dad and what was going on back there with him. We were made to feel that this man is deteriorating right in front of us and the vent is next. They kept telling us, if this keeps going on, well, we're going to have to ventilate him But every time he come off that Presidex and he was coming to, he was agitated. Even with us in the room, he's agitated. And so we thought, well, there's no way. This man is going straight to this ventilator. He is going straight to this damn ventilator. And we've already found out he's got a slim chance of survival if he gets there. So it was a race at that point to save my father's life in that ICU room. And that's exactly what we did. This is exactly what we did. We didn't get no sleep. We prayed constantly. Prayed, gathered in circles in that waiting room. Prayed specifically. Worked. Looking up his my charts. Finding out what to do next. What can we do? And every time that we would go back in there, even when my dad was calm and sedated, obviously he was continually being sedated. And every time we would walk in there, after we had already been in there for hours, and walk back in, oh, he's combative. He's combative. He's breaking masks. He's pulling out IVs. He's roughing up the nurses back there. He is so combative. And basically, if he continues this way, he is going to that vent. We could not understand why my dad was going through this. But then we found out, even through Google and even through people that we know, it goes back to me telling them about his medications that he is taking at home and why isn't he getting them? And he's going through those withdrawals from his medications. Then you're throwing other medications on him. He's already went into a code blue, a Brady, and it's all this medication that he shouldn't have been on to begin with, and this damn protocol. Well, this protocol needs to be per patient. Not everybody can get this same treatment. Not everybody can. People are allergic to medications. People have adverse reactions to these medications. And most of the medications can treat delirium that he was on, but it also counteracts with the other one, and it also can cause delirium. So that's just mind-boggling to me. How some of them can help with it, but then prolonged use or higher doses, and especially being on that Presidex for so long, that he was going straight to that ventilator, and we knew it. Then we Googled up, what do they sedate patients with that are mechanically ventilated? Presidex. So, you know, these nurses that bashed us on social media didn't realize what we were going through, or they did, and maybe maybe you are just one of the bad nurses out there. Like I said, we have good nurses. We know that. But there's also bad nurses back there too. And if you don't believe that, then you're one of the problems. Not everybody's good. And not everybody has want the same outcome for our dad. And that's the way that we feel. My dad is on 2 supplemental insurances. And one of the other insurances that he is on is Medicare. Well, fact check this. If you are diagnosed in a hospital with COVID, the administration and the administrators also gets a portion of this too. Administrator in the hospital gets $5,000. If he is diagnosed with COVID pneumonia, which he was, they get $13,000. If he is on a ventilator, they put him on a ventilator, he gets $39,000. Now, I haven't fact-checked this part of it, but I'm going to. But I've been told through people that has worked with Medicare that if he is on a ventilator for 18 days, they get another $49,000. So, you make your decision on that one. So, as we keep going on, this same we have threatened to get attorneys up there to the administrators. We were wanting to transport him, and in that ICU delirium state, we really knew that there was no way that we could move him in that state of being. That state of being is pretty torturous, apparently. And my dad remembers a lot of that, so a lot of it. And I hate it that he does, but I'm so glad that he remembers it, because nobody would have believed us. Nobody would have believed us. There was points where he felt like, or was told, John, we're going to have to cut your mouth open. We got to put this stuff in here. Did they say that? We don't know, but my dad swears by it and feels like that they were putting glue in his mouth. And he was panicking and agitated. So you wonder why my dad's ripping off IVs and being combative back there? Because with ICU delirium, they feel so much more intensified than just this little pinch. He said, ow! You know, he's screaming just with that little pinch to try to wake him up. He's screaming. So it is intensified. It's just horrible, torturous what these ICU delirium patients go through. And these medications that they put them on can cause it. That's a protocol. So we've been told from the government, basically, and Fauci and everybody else, that if these patients with COPD get this COVID, their chances of survival is slim. Is it your protocol? Is it really your protocol that these patients go into ICU delirium and they get combative and somebody wants to intubate them? Because one doctor says one thing and the night shift says another. And we'll go into that too, because we were praying for the best doctors to come in here to intervene, and we prayed specifically for our father. And one of my friends, I don't know, we're not best friends and we don't go out and we don't do things together, but we are definitely acquaintances, and she knows my children very much. And I won't say her name whatsoever, but we prayed specifically for somebody to come in there and intervene. And she wasn't supposed to come on for 7 days. And mysteriously, after we're threatening to get attorneys, we don't like that doctor, she is coming on. We get a message that, hey, I got your dad. I'm assigned to your dad. I'm coming on. And it was just like a breath of fresh air. But still, it did not stop with just that. She goes into, and we discuss this ICU delirium that we think that it is. And she says, of course, this man has not been fed, and he hasn't. In 3 days that he was in there, he didn't get fed at all. Nothing. So that could make you agitated in itself, and coming off the gabapentin for the nerves in his leg, and being thrown into this ICU delirium. But he wasn't fed in 3 days. But then after that, 3 days, on the 4th day, he was getting this big bag in an IV of nutrients for him. So she was saying, of course he's not. So we need to get a feeding tube in him and start him back on his medications and give this man some food and things like that. Well, it's like a little shake or something, but not real food, obviously. So they started in on that. And I hope I'm not jumping around a lot. It's just that it was so traumatizing back there for that week and a half. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Not that I have a bunch of enemies, but I mean, I just wouldn't wish this on anyone. And that is why that I feel that God has told me to make sure that we spread awareness about this situation. Because I don't believe that these people are dying of COVID in this hospital. I believe that they've got a lot of agitation coming off, especially in elderly patients coming off these medications, being in this ICU delirium, and then all of a sudden they got to go on a vent. So I did want to mention this also. My dad is a night sleeper. I mean, when he sleeps at night, his mouth is open, and we all know that when you have your mouth open and you're not breathing through your nose and out your mouth, and you're breathing in and out your mouth, your body's going to fill up with carbon monoxide. So his carbon monoxide levels going into the hospital was high. Do you know that he did not get tested again for 3 days? Well, he got tested. Sorry, let me back up because I don't want to be a liar. He got done a second time, and it came down. So they never tested him again for it. His his carbon monoxide levels were so high that last day before I tell you that what really happened. So this respiratory therapist leaves. A friend of mine leaves for the day. She tells me he's not going to be intubated. He's going to be on the BiPAP. He's going to stay on the BiPAP. And then night comes around. All these doctors do what they feel like they want to do. And it was actually told to us. So we get this lady in here, and she's kind of a high-strung lady. Kind of really can't talk to her much because she's in there doing her thing. And she makes these comments, well, you guys sit out there and put your feet up, and I'm going to, and if we have to intubate them, we will, because, I do what I need to do back here. Basically, it's not up to us. And if she felt like he needed to be intubated, that she would just override everything and intubate him. That is what she told us. And she also had a nice little pin on her that says intubate them all. So us being the patient's family, you can obviously see how that is making us feel in there. We're not trusting anybody at this point. No one with our dad. No one. And rightfully so. We were lied to. We were lied about his brain and his deterioration. Again, through a screen, and accesses him through a screen. And so we are panicking at that point because we feel like, since she's got this intubate them all on her pin, on her shirt, that since we had episodes of leaving our dad, and it's becoming night, so we've got to leave the ICU because obviously these patients can't have anybody in there overnight, which is crazy. They should have cameras in there, and I hope to God that we can have some kind of act in my dad's name, really, to get some kind of cameras where we can, as their loved ones, watch what's going on in that ICU room at all times. So we get this message from this lady, this respiratory therapist, that if he is combative and keeps tearing off his mask, that he is going to be intubated. So I'm going to back up a day before that also. When my dad was coming to, me and my sister was in there with him by his bedside. And this was one of the times that they were going to lower the Presidex and let him come off of that and start waking up. Of course, my dad was severely agitated. And I knew by what my dad did that he wanted us to keep fighting for him. There wasn't nothing wrong with my dad. Because if there was, he would not be able to pick out a nurse that was right beside me and right beside my sister on the other side. When he came to, it's like his eyes focused like a camera, like it was going in and out until he focused in. And when he focused in, he knew it was us. He knew it was me. He knew it was my sister over there. And he leans up and he grabs this nurse by her stethoscope and pulls her to him and screams, "Stop, stop," like really, really loud. And then they put him back under because he's combative. So do you understand where this is going and how this has made us feel that we were getting steps and steps and steps closer to a ventilator? I feel like we were manipulated into thinking that there was something majorly crazy wrong with my dad's brain and deteriorating to make us feel like we just needed to give up on my dad and let him be intubated because that's what the necessary steps were to do. And so I look up on the dry erase board, and other patients are in there because at this point I am looking at everything in this hospital, looking at what medications he's on. I'm investigating everything at this point. And I look up, and my daughter actually says, "Hey, look at that board up there with all the patients on it. They're all intubated." And I kept looking closer and looking closer. The only one that wasn't intubated was my dad. He was not intubated. He was, it said he was on a BiPAP, and everybody else was intubated. And you know what? The reason, neuro. They just hadn't wrote neuro on my dad's yet and intubated him yet, but it was coming, and we knew it. We knew it. Ironically, I will say this, and now this is not accusing anybody, but with what we went through, I'm not sure that, I don't know what happened with this situation, but I'm going to say this. There was a person in there that was intubated for 3 weeks, and he died the night before that we thought that my dad was going on an intubator. So I knew that vent was coming closer and closer and closer to our dad. I knew it. We all knew it. We all knew it. My mom was kind of out of it a lot, as you could only imagine. She's taking care of my grandmother at home. Coming up here, these people are telling us that he's deteriorating. It was a nightmare. I brought my mom into the chapel, and my sister was actually at home taking care of my grandmother, and my sister was praying on his side of the bed specifically. At the same time, I brought my mother into the chapel, and I told my mother, I said, "They lied, Mom. They're lying and saying that he is deteriorating. His brain is deteriorating. They're saying that they're lying that we consented to this care in this manner and for any treatments." And that alone is what got us moving further and further and further, because at that point, I told the administrators that we were going to get an attorney. I wanted this. This was ridiculous. These people are dying. We have watched people die in there. We have went through watching people die in that ICU waiting room. And it was absolutely horrible seeing it. I told them, I said, you know what? And I told them, and I meant it. I said, if my dad would die in there of his diseases, I could handle it a lot better than him being intubated when he is in his right mind. He's got ICU delirium, and this stuff needs to be reversed, and it needs to be reversed now. It can be. And I said, I'm bawling, I'm crying to them. I said, do the right thing. Go in there, do something, because this man is not going to go out this way. So that's what they did. The next morning, my mom and sister are in there. I get to the hospital. I'm talking to these administrators again. And all of a sudden, my mom and sister comes out and says, Dad's up talking. I could not believe it. I could not believe it. He is up talking. Looked like he was dying, deteriorating. So if I have anything to say to anybody, is to say this: advocate, advocate, advocate for these patients, because this protocol is throwing them into all kinds of things back there. That, you know, their delirium and all this agitation, and you just cannot help but to think, if there's any kind of fraud going on, these people are getting money. Medicare made it easy for them to get hundreds of thousands of dollars to take care of these COVID patients. Especially if they're on an intubator, vented, whatever. I know somebody made a bashing comment to my daughter that she said vent. You know, we've got these, we hand over our loved ones to these people in the ICU, and they're wearing intubated pins. They're saying, if you're crazy, intubate them all. Actually, my other daughter, heard a lady call another lady in there that was being intubated, that she was crazy. Well, I'm over here working with crazy lady. It just kind of pisses you off, don't it? That these nurses can care for your loved ones, and some of them are good and some of them are bad. And some of these doctors are overriding what the other doctor just said in the other notes. They're all crazy. You know, let me explain to you. One doctor said, do not give, because of his kidney levels. And mind you, I kept watching his kidney levels go down dramatically. Not to give him any nephrotoxic agents, and come to find out, remdesivir can cause that, and have that adverse effect. But one doctor is saying don't give it to him, and then this doctor says give it to him. And let me tell you another thing too that's crazy. After we stopped him on that remdesivir, because we were the ones that stopped it, not the hospital. We stopped it. And they said that he only got one dose, but he got two, because it's in his records that he got 2 days. After he got that, hold on, I lost my train of thought a little bit. One of the nurses, actually, while I was in there the night before, asked her, hey, can you look up, because there were some nurses that were really nice and some that wasn't. So I asked one of the nurses, hey, can you make sure that they stop that remdesivir on my dad? And she slung her head around and she said, your dad is not a candidate for remdesivir. He's got chronic kidney disease. But they give it to him. And we watched his levels go down and down and down. What were they going to do? Wait until it got down so far that they had to be put on the vent in dialysis? Or dialysis first and then the vent? You see where this was going? You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this one out. I promise you, that is where it was going. So, for specific prayers, getting the right people back in there, telling them what we feel, them agreeing, me coming down on the administrators, you know, it got turned around. My dad's sitting at home, sitting up in the bed, talking. Told us how he loved us so much and thank you very much for fighting for my life, for his life. Because he would do it for us. Last thing that my mother told him before he went back there is fight for your family, honey. Fight for your family. You're going to pull through this. Fight for your family. And how could we not fight for him? How could we not? We had to fight for him. This man had nothing wrong with his brain. No hemorrhage, no stroke. It was said in his records that all his CT scans came back great. There was an instance where he had to go down. We were trying to hold an MRI because we knew that he was going to get agitated. I'm going back a little bit. We knew he was going to get agitated, but they insisted that they had to because that was doctor's orders. This man is going through the hospital with his eyes wide open in front of the ICU waiting room. My kids are in there. That was amazing when my kids are going to see this, and they were absolutely amazing. They went every step with me and my family, hour by hour by hour. They didn't skip a beat with us. And if it wasn't for y'all either, this wouldn't be happening. We would not be able to tell my dad's testimony. We are a firm believer in that. So he goes in front of the ICU waiting room, and his eyes are wide open, and he is not blinking, nothing. Kids are panicking in there, thinking he's dead. They close his eyes right in front of him. And I believe all because of a doctor gave him remdesivir, and the neurologist is looking at him through a TV screen, teleprompter, teledoc, whatever it's called, and makes his findings through that. Is unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. My dad is very weak right now. He's getting his movement back together again. He's breathing a lot better. My dad, without the power of prayer and getting this thing turned around, was a candidate for them to put on a ventilator, and he wouldn't have made it. There's no way. Not with his condition would he have ever made that vent. And we know that. How can you not fight for him? He fought for us. He showed us the signs. He did everything that we wanted him to do. Because we were praying specifically to give us signs that he was still there. Because we were manipulated to think that he wasn't. So please advocate for your family. You know, we love a lot of nurses. You know, we really do. This is not to come down on all these nurses. But we also know that there is bad nurses too. And I just feel like it's all about money. It's all propaganda. It's all about money. these doctors get kickbacks on this medication. The hospital and an administration gets a lot of money every step of the way, from the diagnosis of COVID to COVID pneumonia, because we knew where it was going. We knew what direction this thing was going. We're not fools. We know. And I tell you what, I got to add this because this is my dad. We knew he was coming back around because one of his really favorite nurses in there, and we won't say her name, but we loved her so much. She made a little joke and said, "Hey, Chuck," well, we call him, his family calls him Chuck. "Hey, Chuck, do you know who the President of the United States is?" And he said, "Unfortunately." He's still there. He's at home making I'm making jokes, but he's at home as his old self again. He still has some weaknesses in his leg. He's got to go through rehabilitation at home, not in a rehab, thank God, because this thing would have he would have went right back into ICU. And we knew that too. So we appreciate all his good doctors and his good nurses, but his original doctor that was in there to begin with, that actually comes from different counties, like far away, set him up for failure from the get-go. So what do you do with that? You advocate for your family. We love him so much. Our family's love runs so deep. Matter of fact, so deep that one of the nurses said, in my history of being a nurse, I have never seen the pouring outcome from love from anybody's family like y'all's. In the fight that we had for our father back there. In the fight that we want to fight for y'all's family. And I hope that you take something out of this video and advocate for your loved ones. And, my name is Linda McCulchick, so you can look me up if anybody has any questions. Anybody can call me. I will talk to anybody. Matter of fact, we had a lot of people all over the United States calling us and trying to help their loved ones. Maybe if we didn't see a lot going on in there, we would have trusted this hospital, but thank God we didn't. Because if we really thought that my dad's brain was deteriorating, we would have just thought that the next step to this thing was a ventilator. And that our dad wasn't coming back to us. But he surely is, with the grace of God. He is back, and all y'all's prayers, he is back at home. And he is so thankful for his life. On paper, my dad shouldn't have survived this, guys. He had COPD, chronic respiratory failure, respiratory distress, kidney failure. He beat COVID's ass. He beat COVID's ass, and he also beat ICU delirium. And he's living proof and talking about it. Does he remember a lot back there? Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Sure, he'll have some kind of PTSD over it too, because that's what they say that a lot of these patients have. He just couldn't believe what he was feeling back there. I hope I didn't miss anything or miss any key factors. I think I got my message across to everybody, and how important it is to think out of the box. Definitely. Don't go by that protocol. Don't go by that protocol and just, it's not a well-oiled machine. This protocol is horrible. This protocol is killing people. And we know it. So if if I have anything else to say, or if I think about anything else, then I will get back on here and talk about it. I'm sure that I will. After I go through this video, I hope I didn't jump around too much. If I do, I'll get back on here again and I'll make another one, and then I'll make it better and better and better, because I want the message out there to these people. Our loved ones are dying over this, and it's not fair. It's not fair to these patients that trust in these hospitals to take care of them. You know, and don't be surprised if administrators give these nurses, the bad ones, a little kickback on making them agitated, making them more agitated. I'm a firm believer in that, and I guarantee it goes on. Can't trust everybody. So advocate, advocate, advocate. And I hope everybody got this message. Thanks.